Hello everyone, and welcome to the Star Traders tutorial Demystifying Trade. I'm your host, Colors Fade. If you're watching this video, chances are you've tried to do some trading and found the process to be a little more complicated than you expected. In most games of this nature, trading is pretty simple. You buy some goods in one system, transport them to another system, and sell them for profit. But trading in Star Traders has a few more layers. Don't worry, I'll do my best to demystify the process for you. There are three key concepts you need to understand before you can begin raking in the cash. The first is legality. Every commodity in the game has a legality rating from 1 to 10. The higher the number, the less restricted it is and the easier it is to trade. The lower the number, the more restricted it is and the harder it is to trade. Commodities with a legality rating of 1 or 2 are generally considered contraband and will be hard to unload unless you find an agreeable independent world or have access to the black market. On the flip side, commodities with high legality are very easy to trade. Some are so safe that you won't even need a trade permit. However, as you might expect, these sorts of goods are generally the least profitable. In order to make real money, you'll need to acquire trade permits and traffic in the more restricted commodities. In order to trade restricted goods, you'll need a trade permit. This is necessary at both ends of the transaction, where you're buying and where you're selling. There are currently 10 factions in the game. In order to trade restricted goods, you need a permit with the faction that you intend to buy from, and a permit with the faction you intend to sell to. Now, if you're buying and selling from the same faction, then you'll only need one permit for both ends. However, in most cases, you'll be buying from one faction and selling to another, and that's when you'll need a trade permit with each faction. For example, if you're going to buy some restricted goods from the Steel Song faction and sell them to the Devalto Syndicate, then you'll need the appropriate trade permit with both factions. Unfortunately, having a trade permit is not quite as simple as it sounds, because trade permits come in different levels. There are 4 levels in total, ranked 1 through 4. A basic Spice Trader's permit at level 1 will allow you to trade most goods that are restricted. However, the more lucrative commodities will require higher level trade permits. As you can see from these screenshots, crop harvesters require a level 1 permit, also known as a Spice Trader's permit. Terraforming components, on the other hand, which are quite a bit more expensive and yield more profit, require a level 3 trade permit, also known as a full trader's permit. In order to trade a commodity, you need the appropriate level trade permit at both ends of the transaction. It's not enough to just have a trade permit, you have to have the right level. So for example, suppose you have a level 3 full trader permit with Steel Song, and that allows you to buy some terraforming components. Then you travel to a Devalto Syndicate world with the intention of selling them, but you only have a level 1 free trader permit with the Devalto Syndicate. In that case, you won't be able to sell those components because you don't have the appropriate level permit. In order to sell those terraforming components, you'll first need to acquire a level 3 trade permit with the Devaltos Syndicate. So remember, you got to have a trade permit at both ends of the transaction, and it has to be the right level. Once you have the appropriate level trade permits with both factions, you'll be able to buy and sell those expensive terraforming components. And that's when the money starts rolling in. One final note about trade permits. Given that there are 10 factions in the game and you'll need trade permits with all the factions you want to do business with, you'll need a quick and easy way to check the status of your current trade permits. Fortunately, this is easily done by visiting the Faction Politics screen via the button at the lower left. This will give you a summary of your relationships with each faction. Moreover, you can quickly see if you have a trade permit with a faction, and you can tell what level of permit you possess. The third part of this whole trade equation is trade law. Recall what we said earlier. Every commodity has a legality rating from 1 to 10, with 10 being the least restrictive and most safe to trade, and a 1 being the most restrictive, typically reserved for contraband. Planets have a similar ranking that works in concert with legality, and it's called trade law. It also goes from 1 to 10. Trade law determines how restrictive a planet is when it comes to trading goods. The lower the trade law rating for a planet, the more lenient it is, and thus the more restrictive goods you can sell there. The higher the rating of their trade law, the more restrictive they are, and you'll have a difficult time selling goods there. So in general, you want to look for planets with low trade law ratings, as this will open up more commodities for trade. Earlier I mentioned that there are 10 factions in the game. Technically there's an 11th faction, Independent Worlds. These worlds are denoted by their unique flag, which is the same for all independent worlds. What makes them special is that they do not require a trade permit in order for you to do business there. You can freely buy and sell any goods on these worlds, with one caveat. Like faction worlds, they still have a trade law rating. Even though you don't need a permit to trade there, you may still be restricted by the trade law of the planet itself. It is possible to run into independent worlds that have a big stick up their butt. That said, most independent worlds have really low trade law ratings, making them easy places to offload contraband and other highly restrictive goods. Not every independent world is like that, so be sure to check the trade law rating before plotting your course to one of these worlds. It sucks to land on an independent world only find out you cannot offload those illegal Xeno artifacts you've been hanging on to. The legality of commodities is fixed, as is the trade law for each planet. The one variable in this equation is the trade permit. It's up to you to obtain them, and in order to do that, you need contacts. Under the contact screen, you can filter your contact list to show only people who offer trade permits. In order to purchase a trade permit from a contact, you'll need a certain level of personal reputation with them. This can be obtained in one of two ways, either by selling intelligence or doing missions for them. Selling intelligence is the quickest and easiest way to improve your rep with a contact. However, sometimes you won't have intel to sell, or if you do, the contact isn't the type to buy it. In that case, you'll have to do a mission or two in order to raise your rep with them. Each time you purchase a trade permit from a contact, you'll use up some of your personal reputation with them. Fortunately, it doesn't take much reputation to get to level 3 full trader permit. As you can see here, all it took for me to purchase the level 3 trade permit with this contact was 22 reputation points. Now that we know about the 3 key elements to trade, legality, trade permits, and trade law, let's put it all together in a simple way so you can get started making money. First, when scoping out worlds for trading, look for worlds with a low trade law rating, so you'll have access to buy and sell the most restrictive and profitable goods. Second, figure out which factions you want to work with, and then purchase trade permits from those factions. This part will take a little bit of time, but it's what makes the whole thing work. Third, when you're considering which commodities you want to traffic in, take note of the types of worlds that have a demand for those products. Whenever you click on an item in the trade exchange, it will tell you which worlds have a high demand for that commodity. Those are going to be the worlds that you want to target, where you can sell those goods. One other thing to understand is each planet has its own individual demand for a given commodity. Sometimes worlds will become saturated with a particular good, and this will drive down the demand, so it's something to be aware of. Finally, when you're selling any commodity, you must adjust the slider down to match the demand of that planet. If you don't, the exchange will not allow the sale. Therefore, if you show up to a world with a bunch of terraforming components, for example, and you see the demand is at a D rating or an F, it might be wiser to search out another destination where you can make some real profit by setting the slider to a B or an A demand. So to sum up, first, get trade permits with the factions you want to do business with. This takes contacts and time. Second, target worlds with low trade laws. And last, trade the most expensive restrictive goods that your trade permits will allow, as these will yield the most profit. Now, what I just covered is the basics of trade. If you knew nothing else, this would be enough to earn some good money. However, there are a few additional pointers you should know about if you really want to min-max your profit. The first thing I want to mention is trade alliances. During the course of the game, some factions will join into trade alliances with each other. What this means for you is that if you hold a level 1, 2, or 3 trade permit with one faction in an alliance, all the other factions in that same alliance will honor it. This can save you loads of time and effort trying to obtain trade permits for all the different factions. Keep in mind, however, these alliances generally don't happen until later in the game, and they don't last forever. But for the time that they exist, you should definitely take advantage of them. Rumors will tell you when a given system is experiencing a shortage, which will drive up the price for goods in that system. If you happen to have trade permits with the factions in that system, you can yield extra profit by trading there. So this is something you want to be on the lookout for. Make sure to check your rumors screen periodically. Every new game in Star Trader starts with a blank slate, meaning you will have no historical data on the systems and planets in the galaxy, and thus no idea which commodities a given world has for sale or which ones they are looking to buy. The only way to learn this information is to physically land on the planet. Once you do, you'll be able to recall this information from the System Atlas, which is accessed through the galactic map. If you haven't visited a planet, there will be no information about its commodities exchange. However, if you have visited the planet, you will see the various commodities they are buying and selling. Keep in mind, this data is only a snapshot of the last time you visited the planet, and things can change over time. Black markets usually occur on worlds with really low trade laws, which makes sense if you think about it. To access a black market, you'll need a contact and some personal reputation with them. You'll have to play the card game to win access, which can also affect your reputation with your contact if the rolls don't go your way. Black markets can be good places to offload contraband like Xeno artifacts, and they can offer quite a nice profit for doing so. However, in my experience, it's almost always easier to just find an independent world with a really low trade law and offload your Xeno artifacts there, because then you won't have to play the card game, you won't have to have a contact with access to the black market, and you won't have to deal with the reputation. Granted, you might not make as much money, but for the ease of doing it, my opinion is independent worlds are the places to dump those things off. One thing I want to make clear is that there are no predefined quote-unquote trade routes in the game. A trade route is simply the path from one world where you buy a commodity to another world where you're going to sell it. It's a trade route if you can buy a good for a low price and sell it for a high price at the destination. That's a trade route. If you do any searching on either the Steam forums or Reddit, you're likely to find people recommending particular routes between specific worlds, saying that they're ideal for certain commodities. If you want to get a head start on making bank, by all means, do that research. Look those routes up, write down what people recommend, utilize those routes, and make money. My feeling is it's kind of more fun to just learn it on your own. I recommend keeping a notebook handy, and every time that you can buy a specific commodity, especially restricted ones that are worth a lot of profit, whenever you can buy them on a planet for a low amount of money, make a note of that. And anytime that you can sell them somewhere else for a lot of demand, make a note of that. And pretty soon you'll establish your own trade routes, the ones that you like. To me, that's the fun of trading in Star Traders, is figuring out those routes yourself, figuring out where those commodities can be bought for cheap and where they can be sold for profit. But if you want to lean on the expertise of other people, by all means, go to Reddit, go to the Steam forums and look these things up and make use of them. It's up to you. It's your game. Play it the way you want to. In conclusion, I want to say that I know it seems a little complicated when you first start trying to trade in Star Traders, and I know there are a lot of layers to this, and it can make it seem more complicated than it really is, but it's actually fairly simple once you get your head wrapped around it. The simplest, most straightforward thing to understand is that you have to have trade permits at both ends of the transaction, and those trade permits need to be as high a level as possible if you want to trade in the more restrictive, profitable goods. Once you have the trade permits, then it's just a matter of finding low legality planets that offer a lot of these goods. Find the planets where you can buy them for cheap, and find the planets where you can sell them for profit. Get the right trade permits with the right factions to do that on those worlds, and you're on your way to making bank. Of course, then you need a big ship with a huge cargo hold and hopefully not too many hostiles in your way, but that's the trick, and that is the path to making money trading in Star Traders. I hope if you found this tutorial useful, you'll give it a thumbs up. You'll like or subscribe to the channel. Definitely leave comments down below if you found this tutorial useful, and share it, spread it around the internet, splash this link, show it to friends. Thank you, everyone. Have a great time. Have fun playing Star Traders, and happy gaming.